Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to see so many auditors here in one room, and that it's really not usual things what it happened in our country. My mission is today present some thoughts about self-government issues and how we are understood and probably how we are work with so complicated issues as seeking for innovation, how mentioned before, Audit General Dalkis. It's not easy to find the good decisions and good ways how to do with innovations, how to unforget results from audits, how Mrs. Ines before mentioned from Estonia. Let's go. What idea is behind our approach and what I want to present probably from another side of view. In 2016, National Audit Office of Latvia started the new practice, prepare a discussion paper. It's in Latvian language, that is the reason why it's in so not good shape. You see these pictures, but if I translate quickly, there we have two discussion papers. The first of all is on information, because before we have made a lot of audits on how properly our national information system works. And then we compare all this, or to make briefs from these audits together in one discussion paper. On the other hand, we have the second discussion paper which regards to state-owned enterprises. Also, we have made a lot of audits on these issues, and finally, we are like to bring together our thoughts in one discussion paper. That it's our new practice. I want to say that it's not absolutely new practice in supreme audit institutions, because in Australia as well as New Zealand, they use such approach for discussion for maybe future understanding about some of issues. What is discussion paper? The first of all, discussion paper includes some insights and reflections, challenges, what it's gained during audits. On the other side, it's some kind of prevention of thematical problems, what we can find if we have made some sorts of several audits in one particular area. As well as this is a way how we want to discuss with possible solutions, how we present possible solutions. Because if you understood well, and as auditors you understood the audit institutions not to interfere or not to compromise the national public policies. Always we just follow and look how this public policies is implemented in particular country well or not so good. The 6 points about what is this discussion paper. The first of all, of course, this is summarize the lessons learned from the past audits, as well as encourage executive power for open discussion. From third point, this is also offer knowledge-based information or solutions what we want to present. On other thoughts, discussion paper on how we are understood, it's some kind of new communication channel, how to communicate it. And that is a venture what is beyond the limits of audit standards. Audit standards, it's prepare very strict rules how we should to do and not to and prepare the normal audits. And always you have some thoughts, some discussions, some ideas what you are not to fill in audit reports. And this is a way how we are good to talk about. And last but not least, adapt a principle advice first. It's some way how we want to, before these problems we see in audit reports, how we are talk with officials, how we are talk with self-governments, and etc. Why self-government? There's always two deep discussions in Latvia and probably in other countries too. The first of all, there's a words of very famous our politicians from beginning of 20th century who said, state will be strong if self-governments will be strong, and he refers to self-government as a cornerstone of democracy and background for all stateness of Latvia. That is one way, and now this discourse and this discussion will continue. There always self-government structure, self-governments, it's some main issues for our democracy, I want to say it. On the other hand, there's a lot of cartoons about what it's really self-governments do and what they want to do. And there's self-government, as Hasta said, what we want, no business, no noise, just sleep and pay tax. That is the reason why the self-government is. And there is some questions what we are always show when we are made audits in self-government for self-government issues, how to cope with these two approaches. From one side, it's big democracy, big background. Another side, okay, we are just use some benefits from what environment to do with this. The purpose of state audit office. The motivation. As I mentioned, self-government always represents themselves as a cornerstone of democracy. In other side, from other point of view, it's not easy for central governments to implement the common regional development policy or common national policies, public policies in any field, because not always or exist substantial differences. And we are always asked, are there some meaningful solutions for that? Because if we look in our countries, in Estonia, for example, there also exists some kind of reforms in self-government area, and we are discussed about to make smaller number of self-governments or larger this, how to compare, and etc. A little bit about the numbers in self-governments. Totally in Latvia we have 119 self-governments. What is important, 619 times this largest self-government differs from the smallest. It's huge differences between self-governments who shall adapt the same public policies what is sometimes presented from the state, as well as 2.3 billion total expenditure. What else on numbers? Almost 1,000 employees work for self-government. It's totally about 3.4% from total number of inhabitants of Latvia. What is interesting, the lowest density is 1.67. If I refer to other countries, the same density of population have Mongolia, as well as Western Sahara. And just only 2 countries, it's lower density. It's of course Greenland, as well as Falkland Islands. That means we have some areas with very, very low density, but anyway, the people want to live in these small rural areas, rural communities. We are something to want to do with this. How we are understood self-governments, how we are to do with this scope. From our point, we are should to consider 2 factors. It's like The first of all, it's market factors. Always we are talk about, are we needs a more larger self-governments or smaller? And sometimes it's not just only simply depend, are you how larger or smaller, because always resources, economical factors, always it's located not equally. In Riga area, in central part of Latvia, always there was economical factors better and never in some eastern parts or western parts of Latvia. Another side, it's depend from dominate values of a self-government like inside looking, because some of self-governments want to develop all these processes, what we are mentioning in our audits, like accounting, like corruption prevention themselves, and pretty well. And in the same time, we have self-governments which want to just only fulfill some very easy tasks, what it's not necessary for public policy planning and etc. It's like these two factors, it's like hammer and beam, because it's external factors and internal factors. And finally, what thoughts we have from all our audits, what we have prepared for self-governments. There's always exist some kind of three areas where we have problems or where we have some ideas. The first of all, it's structure of self-government, because it's quite depend. We have structures of self-governments which simply consist from so-called parishes and have very complicated structure. We have the self-governments with very ordinary structure where just one or two departments work for one problem, as well as we see the cases when some department or two departments, it's located in one stage, just only in two separate rooms, but these two departments work for separate governments. That means there is no single structure. On the other hand, we also have problems with how to balance planning, public policy planning, and financial capabilities. So self-governments sometimes want to do more and more and more, but it's not refers to financial capacities, as well as usefulness and effective services. This is the three areas what we could find in any our audits. And sometimes we should ask, are there some solution how to do with these problems and how to communicate with society as well with self-government in proper way. And that is the reason why we have prepared this discussion documents. Just for example, the copies of this discussion paper, it's located in the end of our room. You can to take and to read through how it's look like. By the way, you are as a first auditory which to how see this document, because not a Latvian see it yet. And I hope we are to discuss with Latvian government somewhere certainly in November or October. But our propose for solution. The first of all, there's some place for systematical approach, that means the conceptual, unified approach. It's better never the temporary and short-term solution. And what we mean for that, of course, we should to determine the long-term structural public policy. That it's our proposal for government, what we should do, as well as we use these terms as a combinate self-government. These terms refers to United Kingdom. In 2007 they have changes in self-government acts, and just now totally in United Kingdom it's 7 or 9 combined self-governments which to work just only for some services, not like in full government. On the other hand, what we are understood, it's sometimes it's better to do less, but do that better. It's mean not always it's necessary for full-scale public policy planning, which it's not possible to do by smaller self-governments, because you know the difference between self-governments, it's too high. Closer to people. What we have understood from our audit reports, services for citizens, it's probably main issues what they want, not to do with some high-level public policy or political process itself. The people want services, and self-government should to concentrate it on that, the firstly, and then to do something else. If government to do that, we are also to want to achieve together with all governments and the National Office of Latvia as partners on this deal to some outcomes. The first of all, of course, there is a sixth one level of self-governments, but nevertheless, there is also room, opportunity for some so-called the new type of combined self-governments. Probably better if we have these combined self-governments to put in brackets, because we don't know exactly for now what kind of self-governments could be better to establish for that. On the other hand, combined self-government should provide a specific service within territories, of course, and organize work in line with some simplified, probably unified procedures under law or zero bureaucracy. That it's also important to get such thoughts. As I mentioned, this approach, it's not no, but we are combined together our audits, what we are confined, together with some on evidence-based ideas from another countries, and to propose for discussion, just only for discussion, and as well as you can read on introductory of this paper, we are always said that it's not our like a strong position like in audits. Just only we want to more open discussion which is based on some kind of alternatives. What is challenged proposed for discussion report? The first of all, this report, we hope it could be intensify the issues which is a very topical for public policy agenda, for political agenda too. The second, report lead recommendations, what it's mentioned in our discussion paper. It's also some kind of view from outside, because sometimes it's if you are working self-government or in government institutions, you are just to close your views or your thoughts in one way, and you didn't see what we want to so in another systems how it's work. And the third, we offer alternatives to public policy makers. It's some kind of alternative thinking, alternative for public policy preparation. And I hope it could be very valuable way how to communicate with self-governments, how to communicate about our reports, what sometimes it's not easy to read, as well as that's the way how to offer these alternatives to the public policy planners as politicians. As well, what we have used more in this audit discussion paper, what you can see, we also use a lot of cartoons. Because sometimes, the numbers, it's very good way how to present your ideas. But on the other hand, written text or written words together with cartoons also take some another thoughts about what could you do with these complicated issues, what we are called audits and self-government. And thank you.
Thank you, Valērijs, for this interesting presentation. I would just like to point out that Valērijs is a rather humble person, because what he didn't mention in his presentation, that he is the main person behind this new initiative in elaborating those discussion papers. We can only be very thankful that he has now turned his attention to the municipal auditing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olga Vitkauskiene. I'm from Lithuanian Supreme Audit Institution. And first of all, I would like to thank you for a really interesting presentation, a really comprehensive one. And also to thank you for this occasion, for us as the first ones to see in practice this discussion paper and even to touch it. Yes, so it will be really interesting for us, a new product. And my question is related also with this discussion paper. I would like to ask you, how are you planning to present this discussion paper to the wider audience? I mean, will you have presentations? Will you send this paper, or you will have some discussions or meetings through which you will present it, and maybe in the parliament or only in the local government sector? Mm-hmm. So
it's really important to provide this information to proper auditory. Of course, first of all, what we have to do is this discussion paper we are published in our national audit site homepage. It could be available for any comments, any thoughts. The second, we are go to the parliament, to our commission, which is specially designated for our audits, and as well as to present this report as well as presentation to the parliament. The third channel, it could be said, it's how we just find what through which it's better to do with is high education institutions. Because sometimes the students who to study in some regional development programs through, we have of course some kind of regional high schools. And through these meetings and through this discussion with students, I hope we are just to find two-way of solution, just not only to present our ideas, but also to tell for students about what means work, what the National Audit Office of Latvia to do, and probably attract more new people in our National Audit Office as employers. and that is the third way. And of course, we are just want to discuss with Latvia Local Authority Association, as well as with self-governments, if they want to do this. And what we are found in our previous this discussion papers. The first of all, of course, in very beginning, there is an interest, it's growing up. But anyway, there are politicians and policy planners, they are always forget about, because it's this living time for audit report, it's very short. And this is also a way how we want to expand the living time for audit reports, and how to also to discuss probably with Ministry of Environment Protection and Regional Development, what its main ministry for regional development in Latvia, as well as, but okay, that is just only ideas, but the three main channels is the student auditoria, the parliament, as well as open discussion in our website.
Perhaps a small question from my side. You already mentioned the first two discussion papers we presented and published. Perhaps you could elaborate a little more on the reaction from ministries, from the parliament on those two documents.
The reaction from ministries, as you know, it's obviously and It's very easy. Ministry said, we are always to do what you are propose. This is not new from ministry side. We are to do this. That is the one point, one of reaction, one way of reaction. There's nothing new. Better reaction and better probably understanding what we want to say through this discussion paper. It's come from different non-governmental institutions, NGOs, because they are read more carefully, and they are instead our National Audit Office to ask ministries why you are not to fulfill that and that solution what proposed from National Audit Office of Latvia. And that is the way how to also to little bit to expand this reaction, just not only always the National Audit Office work with ministries or some public bodies, but discussion paper, it's a way how we have possibility to work with non-governmental institutions. And that it's important to get in our side as much as possible some new actors, new stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much. So you can see that we use this kind of a document not only to give second life to our audit report, so to say, not only to influence or foster the policy debate, but also to engage new actors in our work. Thank you, Valērijs, very much once more.
Thank you.